Mechanical watches are tiny universes. With just the power of a spring, gears turn inside a 4-centimeter case, creating a beautiful flow of time. There's a young man who is passionate about making watches. His name is Masahiro Kikuno. Kikuno is very exacting in his handiwork. Using age-old methods, he cuts, polishes, and finishes every part himself. The traditional beauty of Japan resides deeply in his work.
こういう時代に作るからこそ、あえてそういうテクノロジーに頼らないその昔の人の背中を追っかけるような作り方で、その当時のものを超えるようなものができたらってね。
One clock crafted in the mid-1800s stands as a special challenge to Kikuno, the myriad year clock. With more than 1,000 parts, it's an exquisite example of complex mechanical artistry. Kikuno wants to transform this masterpiece into a modern wristwatch. It's a 6-month project that will test his skills to the limit. We'll accompany him on his journey. The city of Basel, Switzerland, lies on the Rhine River. Every spring, people from all over the world converge here with one purpose in mind. Basel World is the largest timepiece trade show in the world. More than 1,500 brands from over 100 countries display their latest creations. It's a watch lover dream. In one corner of the sprawling complex, one small booth excites passionate interest. Here, the creators themselves welcome visitors. They are independent watchmakers who do not work for corporations. Their creations are one-of-a-kind masterpieces. It can take anywhere from 6 months to several years to complete a single timepiece. Though their watches can easily cost more than $100,000, these modern-day masters often have several years' worth of advanced orders.
They are very much the avant-garde of the industry because they have no, we'll call it, brand codes they have to follow. They just have to follow their genes.
Comme tous les artistes, comme si on prend les peintres, les sculpteurs, ils s'expriment à travers leurs œuvres. Parce que chaque pièce, si vous la prenez, si vous interrogez l'horloger, pourquoi elle a créé ça, il a toute une histoire.
This Academy of Watchmakers has 35 members from 16 countries. It stands at the pinnacle of worldwide craftsmanship. Founded 30 years ago, the Academy subject potential members to rigorous examination before allowing them to join. Masahiro Kikuno is the youngest member of the group. Today, Masahiro Kikuno visits a Zen temple to contemplate its round meditation window. This perfect circle, cut in the wall of the temple's main building, is called the Window of Enlightenment. In the world of Zen, An unbroken circle represents the universe and spiritual truth. When Kikuno designs a watch, he often skillfully incorporates Japan's distinctive culture and tradition. Tourbillon, 2012. The carved dial was inspired by a Zen rock garden, expressing the ideals of simplicity and the patina of age. The watch face of Mokume features a mottled pattern made by decorating metal to suggest wood grain. It was inspired by the wood grain decorative technique used on traditional sword cuts. Orizuru, folded crane. The press of a button causes the crane's wings to flap and gently chime the time. The square case was inspired by the square chest of drawers traditionally used on ships. For centuries, Japan has nurtured hearts of harmony. Kikuno interprets that spirit in new ways and incorporates it in his timepieces. A small house stands in Matsudo, a suburb of Tokyo. This is Kikuno's workshop. To sharpen his concentration, he keeps the shutters closed even in daytime. Kikuno carries out every phase of the watchmaking process himself, from design to fabrication and assembly. The watch hands, for example. He begins with a rough sketch of what he has in mind. Once the design is finalized, he uses a jeweler's saw to cut the shapes out of a steel sheet. He then files them. The next step is annealing the metal. When iron is heated, it oxidizes in a chemical reaction that creates a thin protective coating. The color of this coating changes depending on the temperature. Precise timing is crucial to get the most beautiful shine.
ちょっとまだ黄色っぽいっていうか、もうほんの1秒ぐらい早かったぐらいですかね。
Ordinary watchmakers fabricate their parts by machine, but Kikuno is committed to making every component with his own hands. He wants to make watches that are comparable to the works of past master craftsmen.
この手のなせる技っていうのはもう限界があるというか、その中で、自分の一生の中でどれだけその技を磨き上げて、その先人の時計師を驚かせるような時計が作れるのかっていう、そういう挑戦ですかね。その平等な条件でこうやり合いたいっていうんでしょうかね。はい、そういう気持ちがありますね。
Kikuno has a predecessor he regards as his spiritual model. He was a brilliant 19th century inventor named Hisashige Tanaka, who was known as Mr. Mechanical. This boy archer grasps an arrow, takes aim, and fires. This young boy wets his brush with ink and writes in elegant calligraphy. Hisashige brought both of these dolls into the world. Inside, they're powered by mechanical works. The complex motions are achieved solely by springs and gears. The ultimate masterpiece created by Hisashige is the myriad year clock. The top of the clock displays a celestial globe. It replicates the movements of the sun and moon as seen from Kyoto. Each of the clock's 6 sites indicates some form of time, including Japanese and Western clocks, days of the week and phases of the moon. Amazingly, all of these functions are completely integrated and can keep running automatically for a year. The myriad year clock has more than 1,000 components. Hisashige painstakingly filed every gear individually by hand. His work marked the height of Japanese craftsmanship in the 19th century. It deeply impressed Kikuno.
覚悟っていうか、そういうやり方でやってみてもいいんじゃないかっていうような、そういう助言をいただいたというか、お前もやってみろみたいなそんな思いを勝手に受け取ったんですけどね。自分もこういうふうに150年後残るようなものが作れるのか、残ってくれるのかってことですね。僕の作った時計が。
September 2014. Kikuno begins work on a new watch. He takes on the challenge of myriad year clock made by his hero, Hisashige. He wants to put one of the clock's functions into watch form. What caught his eye was the dial for the Japanese-style clock. This clock counts time using a temporal hour system that's distinctive to Japan. In Hisashige's era, daytime and nighttime periods were each divided into 6 segments. This meant that the absolute length of the segments changed with the seasons. In summer, for example, daytime segments were longer and nighttime segments were shorter. The opposite was true in winter. Synced to solar rhythms, this was an ancient, natural way to tell time. The hours of the Japanese expanded and contracted with the seasons. To keep track of these elastic temporal hours, Hisashige's clock has a special dial that automatically shifts the position of the hourly numerals depending on the time of year. This feat is accomplished through a large apparatus that incorporates no less than 16 gears. It's the most complicated mechanism found in the myriad year clock. It would be almost impossible to make this mechanism small enough to fit inside a wristwatch. A new system is needed.
これは今和時計の腕の部分を作っているところですね。これが肝になる部品ですね。
Kikuno has cut several unusual shapes out of steel. He layers them at the center of the watch. He invented the mechanism to indicate temporal hours. He calls it the arm assembly. The arms resemble the ribs of an umbrella. By moving a single pin, all of the arms move at once. Each arm is attached to a temporal hour marker. When the arms move, the spaces between the markers expand and contract in the same way as the myriad year clock. This movement is controlled by a single cam under the arm assembly. It takes 1 year for the cam to complete a single rotation. Set in a groove on the cam surface, the pin moves in a prescribed pattern as the cam turns. By changing the shape of the groove, Kikuno can indicate temporal hours in most places in the world. With his new he hopes to resurrect the Japanese clock in the form of a modern wristwatch.
彼は置き時計で作りましたけど、作詞時計にしてみたいっていうのはその昔からの夢っていうか、最初にその万年時計を見た時からそれは達成したいなっていうふうには考えてましたね。
Go on to finish his watch in time with the World International Trade Fair held in Switzerland. In December, Masahiro Kikuno travels north. He's heading home to fabricate the components for his new watch. Kikuno was born and raised on the northern island of Hokkaido. He keeps a large machine tool here in the garage of his family home. He uses it to cut various parts out of metal ingots. The main plate. This is the foundation that holds the entire mechanism. The smallest gear is called the pinion. It's less than 1 millimeter in diameter. The depth of each tooth is just 0.24 millimeters.
まあ一個ずつこうできていきますからね、形になっていくんで、そういう意味では非常に面白いですよね。
Kikuno's family often look in on him as he works. They want to see how he's doing. The profession of independent watchmaker isn't yet well known in Japan, but Kikuno's family have been his biggest supporters every difficult step of the way. As a child, he loved to fold and play with blocks. His parents say that when he was 2, he wore out the owner's manual for their car, looking at the diagrams. After graduating high school, he joined the ground self-defense force. He was noticed for his ability to disassemble a rifle and was assigned to a weapons maintenance unit. The turning point came in the summer of his 3rd year in the force. He happened to pick up a magazine that featured independent watchmakers. It changed his life.
こんなに綺麗にこんなに複雑な時計を一人でやっちゃうっていうところに、いや本当にすごいなと思うとともに、自分も何かそういう自分の時計みたいなのが作れたら嬉しいだろうなっていうふうに当時は思って見てたんですよね。まあ本当に遠い先の話だと思ってましたけどね。
In 2005, Kikuno moved to Tokyo. He enrolled in a watchsmith school. After 3 years, he started making his own watches. It took him 4 years to sell his first watch. He was 29 years old.
正弘がさ、自衛隊を辞める。辞めて時計の学校に来たっていうことを聞いたときに、私はね、びっくりするっていうよりか、なんていうのかな、正弘が何か本当にしたいことが見つかったのかなと、そういう気はした。
みんなが応援しているからね。背負うものも大きくなるかもしれないけど、でも好きな道でやっていけるなんて最高に幸せだよね。
だけど本当にあっと驚くようなね、そういう時計をいっぱい作ることがあるのかな。まずは自分に与えられた使命だと思うんで、自分にしかできないことをやっていこうかなと思います。
It is late January 2015. Kikuno now faces his biggest challenge in the parts-making process. It's the tiny pinion he machined in Hokkaido. The tip must be cut even finer. Watches are run by gear trains, which multiple gears turn with power supplied by a spring. The last gear in the train is called the escape wheel. Working with the balance wheel, which acts as a pendulum, the escape wheel determines the speed of the watch's movement. The escape wheel pinion is the part that Kikuno must now cut. The tip is only 0.08 millimeters across, thinner than a postage stamp. Kikuno is working on a micro level. We use a 4K camera attached to a microscope to watch him work. The screen shows a vertical space of about 3 millimeters. Kikuno gently touches a cutter to the rotating pinion. He shaves off 1/1000th of a millimeter at a time. Using handles, he makes tiny adjustments by hand. With great care, he cut the tips smaller. He relies on the look of shavings and the subtle feel of the controls to guide him.
$1000分の5ぐらい削れました今ね。0.094。
Kikuno works steadily for 8 hours. He finally finishes the escape wheel pinion, the smallest gear in the watch. This completes all the parts in the gear train that drives the watch movement. Kikuno inserts his newly made pinion and assembles the watch. He wants to see if the gears function properly. If the balance wheel at the heart of the watch ticks, he has succeeded.
動きましたね。よかった。とりあえず天ぷら降ってくれたな。よかった。一安心というか嬉しいですね。この瞬間ってやっぱり嬉しいな。
Basel World is a month and a half away. Kikuno's unique watch is gradually taking form. It's mid-February. Basel World is just a month away. Kikuno faces a major hurdle. His arm assembly, the key to miniaturizing Hisashige's original mechanism, isn't open correctly.
この部品がレールから外れちゃうんですね、ここがね。今外れた。
When the arms move, one of the pins gets lifted out of its bed. The arm assembly is a complex mechanism with a total of 96 parts. The slightest resistance or contact in one place affects the whole assembly.
いや、一つだけじゃないですね。かなり複合的に。部品がこれだけ重なり合って機能し合うんで、一個じゃないですね。で、一つずつ潰していけば大丈夫なはずなんですが。
Today, Kikuno discovers a place that was scraping. It's a very tight fit between the arm assembly and the bridge plate. That scraping was raising the assembly. He takes it all apart and adjusts each arm one at a time.
やっぱり今まで経験したことないトラブルというか、どうやればそれを解決してクリアできるのかっていうのを考えるっていうのは非常に面白い作業ですよね。あんまりすんなりしすぎてもちょっとつまらないですよね、やっぱりね。まあ絶対そんなにすんなりいくもんじゃないですけどね。
Kikuno spends several days making adjustments. The National Museum of Nature and Science. This is the preeminent museum of Japanese science and technology, with a Japanese clock collection that exceeds 200 pieces. Hisashige's myriad year clock is on display here. When Kikuno hits an impasse in his work, he often comes here to clear his mind. Today, he's not here to see Hisashige's clock. He has a special appointment to see a precious item that's usually not on display. It's a toolbox that was used by a 19th century clocksmith.
これ洋時計なんですよね。ですからこう改造してた時計の道具箱ですね。
The springs, hands, and other parts in the box have remained untouched for more than 150 years. One gear in particular captures Kikuno's heart. The artisan fashioned it by hand, using only a file.
綺麗なんだよなすごいこの歯車がお前にこんなに綺麗に歯車作れるかっていう風に言ってるような感じがするんですよね。こうビシッとこう作られたそのものがこう150年ぐらいの時代を経てここにいるわけなんですけど、いやよくやってるな。できないはずないんですよね。昔できてるわけですから。ただ昔のものを見れる分今の方が有利なんで、それ以上のものを作らなきゃ勝ったことにはならないんですよ。いやすごいな面白いな。
Just a month remains to finish the watch. Kikuno sleeps in his workshop as he makes the final push. March 11th. Kikuno will depart for Basel in 6 days. He finally has all the parts he needs. There are 293 parts. Over the past 6 months, he has cut, polished, and finished each one. It's time to do the final assembly. With intense concentration, he puts the pieces together, carefully checking the movement as he goes. He double-checks the arm assembly, which indicates the temporal hours.
あとちょっとなんですけどね。なんか怪しいな。
Kikuno had doubts about the movement. When he was testing the watch, he felt a slight resistance in one place.
手では十分動くんですけど、その時計のゼンマイの力で動かすときにもしかしたら抵抗が止まるかもしれない。
Kikuno decides to set the watch aside for a day to see if it keeps moving. The next morning, is the watch still ticking? Kikuno's doubt was justified. The watch has no pulse. The biggest problem comes when the hours are clustered together at the summer solstice. At that point, many arms lie on top of each other, putting the greatest load on the arm assembly. He takes the watch apart again and checks every point where pressure is applied to the arms. If he feels any resistance at all, he uses a whetstone to reduce it. He must be careful. If he files too much off, 6 months of work will be ruined. He removes 1,000th of a millimeter at a time. He stands by to see if the watch will keep ticking. It reaches the summer solstice, where it stopped before. Kikuno has cleared the final hurdle. With concentration, he continues the assembly process. The watch is finished. The myriad year clock is reborn in a new form. Kikuno called it Wadoke Revision. The purple hands indicate the usual hours and minutes of a day, divided into 24 equal units. The blue hand indicates temporal hours, the ancient method of timekeeping that changes with the seasons. One watch indicates both Western and Japanese time in a fusion of temporal sensibility. The back features a round design inspired by the window of enlightenment that Kikuno saw at the Zen temple. Within the design is a grating carved in a hemp leaf pattern. Kikuno copied the pattern from a pillar on the myriad year clock. Kikuno has reinvented the craftsmanship and spirit embodied in a clock made more than 160 years ago. March 19th, 2015. The annual timepiece trade show begins in Basel. Aficionados, buyers and reporters are among 150,000 visitors over an 8-day period. Kikuno's watch immediately draws media attention.
Number, kanji number.
Oh, it is, okay.
8, 7, 6.
Where's 3?
4. No 3. Very strange.
They say, please make me one.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And what's most amazing is that, as I understand, he really makes everything himself. And there aren't many people doing that these days. And the complication that's, of course, very Japanese, nobody else would think to do. And I haven't figured out how he does it yet.
普段ずっと工房で一人でやってるじゃないですか。だから 自分の作ったものが他の人が見てどういう感想を持つのかとかっていうのも全然わからない状態でずっとやってて、こういう場で見てもらって、すごいこう感動してくれる方もいたりして、本当にそれを見た時にああ作ってよかったなっていうか、そう思いますし、もうこのままこうやり続けようっていうふうに思いますよね。帰ったらまたすぐ時計を作りたいなって思いました。
Auction houses usually care only about what goes over the counter, what makes money. And both genuine and fake goods go over the counter. There's no difference. They throw their ethical principles overboard, as long as it sells.
These bonds are from auction houses, galleries and art dealers. They all have one thing in common. Archaeologist Stefan Lehmann reckons they're fakes. The work of a mystery superforger known in German art circles as the Spanish Master. No one knows who he is, but Lehmann is on his trail.
The Spanish Master is a makeshift name. Nobody knows exactly what it's supposed to mean or where it comes from. I've heard the expression used in the art trade in general. I recently met an archaeologist who claimed to have coined the expression because he knows a forger from Spain. When I asked him for his name, he said, "Oh, I can't think of it right now."
Lehmann ascribed these portraits of ancient rulers to the forger. August Caesar, Alexander the Great. All the sculptors have a common attribute, an emotional facial expression, which is actually not typical of classical antiquity. They're always bronze heads, which are in especially high demand among art collectors.
This one was put up for auction at Bonham's. This is one of the heads that was offered in New York by Robin Symes in the December auction. This was acquired conventionally over the counter in a New York antique shop. This one was put up for auction in Munich. This one's been sold several times. It's already got quite a history. Today it's in the possession of a foundation in Geneva in a museum. As far as I know, this one is in Geneva too.
Lehmann is a professor at Martin Luther University in Halle. From his office, the Berlin-born expert researches the art market and finds so many heads he considers dubious that he has to shake his own.
Look, this one's still on offer. Approximately $250 AD, price upon request, of course.
Preis auf Nachfrage ist klar.
The price, well, it starts at about $1 million.
Fängt es bei $1 Million an.
As an art dealer for 40 years, Christoph Leon sold many major pieces of ancient art to international museums. He made a decision that's unusual for an art dealer. He wants to talk about his observations in the ancient art trade. He shows us the catalogue of an international auction house that sold off a collection.
Only a few pieces are genuine. Let's go through them quickly. This one's so fake it stinks. Look, it's so blurred. A sculptor in antiquity would never have done that. You can forget it. No ancient sculpture ever looked like that, with these eyes, these big bulgy eyes. This one's ridiculous. You can tell by the hair. The hair always gives the game away. The vases are okay. We won't waste our time on them. This is so fake it stinks. This one's impossible. It's all rubbish. This one here, too. None of them are antiquities. Here's another one, with the male member bulging through the cloth. That was never done in ancient times. It all got sold. The few genuine works and all the forgeries. $47,000, $83,000, $59,000. That's big money. Everybody keeps tight-lipped and does nothing. No one goes and says, "Careful, my friend, what you have here is a disaster. You wasted your money."
Leon says up to 50% of all antiques sold at auction are fakes. It's an incredible figure. High above Manhattan, the experienced American archaeologist Oscar White Muscarella watches the art trade. He worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a curator for many years and is a renowned expert. He's considered good conscience of archaeology because he doesn't mince his words. You could say he's a kind of whistleblower.
One of my mentors here, Sherlock Holmes, I have learned that both dealers and collectors will send things to auction houses because they're forged. I talked to Gil about this once, and he smiled. And what they're doing, you see, instead of selling it to a customer from their own shop, they don't want to sell forgeries. We don't want to sell forgeries. A lot of dealers don't want to sell forgeries. They put it up for auction under a false name, or they'll say from an old collection, when it says the provenance, from an old family collection, or from an old collection, or from Monsieur X. And these are dealers who are selling the forgery in auction and not being personally involved in who buys it, you see. And America, because it has so many museums, is a prime target for sale of forgeries.
New York may seem far away, but the international trade has made its way to provincial Eastern Germany too, as Stefan Lehmann experienced personally. This bronze bust of Alexander the Great was presented at the Winkelmann Museum in Stendal in Saxony-Anhalt in 2000. Later it emerged that the bust had belonged to the London art dealer Robin Symes. Stefan Lehmann attributes the bust to the Spanish master, whose style he recognizes in it. The special appearance of the edges where it was supposedly broken in ancient times. An evenly spread patina. The face completely preserved, as if by magic. Lehmann went public with the news that the museum was displaying the bust without clear detail of its provenance.
I was there and I took a look at it, and to me it was crying out that it was a forgery. I was quite astonished, so I bought the catalog and I found that less convincing. I mean, there are many forgeries, and even the best of us can fall for a fake. There's nothing more to say. So I published a lecture which I gave here in Halle in the form of a museum booklet, and expressed my own view that, in my opinion, it's out of the question that the piece under consideration is from the ancient world.
Ancient bronze bust of Alexander, or a well-made forgery by international art dealer mafia. 10 years ago, the sculpture was considered a sensation, displayed at the Winkelmann Museum, allegedly on loan from a private collector. But the accusation that it's a fake go back a long way.
I'm still of the same opinion as stated in an academic publication that we are dealing with a forgery here.
The Winkelmann Society, however, accused him of libel and sued. Was simply a scholarly dispute or an archaeological scandal? To avoid a lengthy trial, a mediator was hired. But meanwhile, the purported bronze sensation has been missing since the exhibition 10 years ago.
To go down a legal route and sue me, that was a new departure, I must say. And in a certain way, it's a form of violence. That was also the intention. The lawyer for the plaintiff told me the aim was to get me removed from my post.
Eventually, the trial ended at the regional court with a settlement, the details of which both parties have agreed to keep secret. But instead of shutting Lehmann up, the trial spurred him on to carry out more research. Forgeries are an unpopular topic in archaeological circles. Lehmann is one of the few archaeologists who address it publicly. and word has got around. Today he's looking at a new case. A Swiss collector who wishes to remain anonymous bought a bronze head in New York, but then started having doubts about whether it was genuine. Usually, Lehmann looks for bronze heads at art fairs and in museums, galleries and auction catalogues. Now, for the first time, a possible work by Spanish master is on his very own desk. It's a portrait of Augustus Caesar. It's a stroke of luck for Lehmann and his colleague Henrik Löhr, who's also an archaeologist. The Swiss collector, says Lehmann, could have sold the head on and is now risking a loss of a good €1 million.
Impressive piece.
If the head turns out to be a forgery, it will be immediately worthless.
It's certainly very impressive. You look at it, and the first thing you say is, it's a wonderful head. It's also spectacular because there are very few bronze heads of Augustus. That also increases its value.
Prices for works of ancient art have risen rapidly in recent years. Many people looking for a safe investment buy works of art. Stefan Lehmann believes the stock markets and the trade in antiquities are linked.
Of course, it's something you can easily explain with the new era after 1989. And there was a whole new market of billionaires, oil billionaires. The stock markets went crazy. People earned quick money. And there are very many people with almost inconceivable amounts of money. And one of the investments recommended by banks is antiques, paintings and works of ancient art. The Spanish master and his circle tried to help by meeting market demand forgeries.
That explains why forgeries are made, you see. And forgeries are sold all over the place, you see. And because there's a market for it, because museums and collectors buy it. We're talking money, money, money is the underlying factor in the reason this is done, because only rich people have the money to pay for it. And these rich people take further advantage by donating it, take your tax deductions, you get prestige. You see. And this goes on and on and on. As we're sitting here, it exists at this very moment.
So the trade in antiquities is obviously awash with forgeries, according to Oscar Mascarella. Surprisingly, many experts in German museums and universities know about it too. But it's frowned upon to write expert opinions for the art trade because of concerns that, in addition to forgeries, there's a lot of looted art on the market. Markus Hilgert, who heads one of the sections of Berlin's Pergamon Museum, has barred his staff from writing expert opinions on antiquities for the art trade.
On the one hand, you have those who say we have to document illegally exported works for academia, so that the knowledge does not get lost. And on the other hand, you have those who say that by writing expert opinions, you raise the value of a work of art and make it even more profitable. And that is also my personal opinion. I decided that we could not and should not write any more evaluations, because the experts are the ones who assess an item and give its value with their assessment.
Christoph Leon was an art dealer for many years and had a doctorate in archaeology. We joined him on his way to France. A museum there is allegedly exhibiting several heads of dubious provenance, including some works ascribable to the Spanish master. Leon has known the archaeologist Stefan Lehmann from Halle for many years. Whenever works from antiquity show up that appear suspicious, they exchange views and information. Leon says the market forgeries has been booming for several years now. As an art dealer, he personally experienced the developments on the art market for 40 years.
I spent 4 years at Bern University until 1970. And Borowski, one of the biggest dealers in antiquities at the time, asked me to join him in Basel. We worked together for a year and a half, and then I set up my own business. I've been an art dealer ever since, but I never really left academia. Over the years, I've always tried to stay within certain rules of the game. I did not do all the things people around me were doing back then, because I knew it would backfire sooner or later. I'm no saint, but I put limits on myself from the word go because I came from a different side. I came from academia.
Meanwhile, in Halle, Stefan Lehmann continues to examine bronze head from the New York art market. His research has also exposed the market strategies adopted by the alleged forger.
The Spanish master's forgery workshop naturally thinks about images it can produce for the market. In ranking of archaeological objects, bronze sculptures are number one. They're something very special, and we can expect them to attract great attention. He has a grumpy expression, rather than the ideal one we imagine for Augustus. You can tell that the artist is playing with emotions a little bit, but it's a fantastic piece.
Stefan Lehmann also heads the archaeological museum belonging to the university in Halle. Its storerooms contain a collection of plaster casts of original artworks from classical antiquity. These correspond exactly to the genuine antique portraits. Whenever Lehmann examines suspected forgery, he always compares this with an original, as in the case of this portrait of Augustus Caesar. Archaeologists call this method stylistic analysis. It's a centuries-old approach used to identify genuine works of art simply by looking at them. It takes years of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and intuition.
You can see here how an official portrait of Augustus looks. These eyes aren't very arched. They just have a slight curve. Then there's the long nose and the mouth, which is oriented toward the vertical axis. Then this calm facial expression, this very calm expression with only slightly raised contours. Only very light modeling, which transports a very calm time-space.
And then we have the serrated at the bottom, hardly bent at all, but allegedly torn off with great force.
When you look at the details, you have doubts about whether it really is a fake. It's perfectly done. Masterly, so to speak.
Stefan Lehmann really does think the head is a fake. But to make sure his verdict is right, he has to get the head examined again, by scientific means. The Fraunhofer Institute in Fürth specializes in testing materials. Normally, the scientists here test industrial products and research prototypes. An alleged forgery by the Spanish master is a first for them. Art evaluator Harald Müller wants to have the bronze head scanned. It's the first time anyone has tried to analyze a suspect sculpted head in this way.
We've already conducted a range of tests. And to round it off, we'd like a CT scan of the inside of.
What exactly are you hoping to be able to see the CT scan?
You've got casting defects, repair marks, and what I'm really looking for is the holes left behind by the spacers.
Müller is hoping to see inside the head, into the material it's made of, to find out the method used to produce it.
I reckon he's all right there.
Looking good and stable.
Augustus is set up for CT scan. Now Müller and the Fraunhofer Institute physicist are ready to examine the head. Müller is a materials scientist and evaluates works of art made of metal, porcelain or fabrics. This time it's bronze, purported to be from ancient times. The first of the pictures popped up on the screen.
There you have your spacer. Looks quite funny. That's good too.
But there appears to be a serious problem.
This is very strong radiation. We can hardly recognize any sharp material structure.
You get the feeling that there are definitely some cavities material, but you can't define precisely how deep they are. We simply didn't have enough radiation energy to penetrate his head properly.
So Augustus will have to have his head examined again. Suspect bronze sculptures in France.
Ja, zu den in dem Museum in Südfrankreich in Mougins, im Privatmuseum.
As regards the heads in the museum south of France in Mougins, a private museum belonging to an Englishman who made a lot of money and loved art, he collected and then built a museum of antiquity in the south of France. And suddenly, and this really surprised me, several ancient Roman bronze heads showed up here. One of them has long hair. That's highly suspect. Then there's this head with short hair. That was unknown to me. Yes, it's very strange. We have a head that is certainly supposed to have been part of a bust or a statue, as you can tell from the broken edge. The person is wearing a full beard and striking moustache. So, all at once, we have one known in addition to 2, 3, 4, 5 of these life-sized or slightly larger than life-sized heads made of bronze, which are obviously supposed to come from statues.
Meanwhile, Christophe Léon has arrived in the south of France. He wants to take a look himself at the museum Stefan Lehmann told him about. In his view, what some of his counterparts in the art trade do is up to them. But when purported works from antiquity that are considered highly suspicious by academics make their way into museums, that's going too far.
Ja, hallo.
You can already identify the museum's problem areas on the internet because the exhibits are very well depicted, well photographed, well presented. But the golden rule in archaeology, the key is forensics. In other words, you have to examine things yourself. And then when you look at a piece and determine that it's genuine, you have to be honest enough to admit that you got it right. We have to start fighting to keep museums free of forgeries. Museums are standard works. Imagine if art history were suddenly studied on the basis of forgeries.
He's taking a look at the heads in the museum. He wants to make up his own mind first before he makes his assessment known.
This is completely wrong, way off the mark. The locks of hair like snakes, no. It's quite possible that this is a forgery by the Spanish master. I definitely examine with that in mind. Then I might be convinced. But, as I've said, one of the features of the Spanish master is that he tries to create ancient heads but never quite succeeds. Ultimately, these heads portray a different zeitgeist, a different spirit. You can see it. No head of hair was ever portrayed out in antiquity. Didn't happen. This head is strange too. I don't trust it. It's not an ancient style portraying someone like that. There's no such thing, an ancient face with eyes rolled upward. And ultimately, things were sold to him that had already graced the depots of various antiquities dealers for years. And then things like that came along. That's definitely a fake. A head like that is not from antiquity. I have my doubts about this, too. And things come along and you get carried away and you want to have them. But that's obviously what happens when you put together a big collection under pressure. And there are many objects here. The museum's full. Like I've said, all museums have erroneous purchases in their basements. Lots of them. This museum too. But they should sort through them and only exhibit the real ones.